Welcome back, everybody, to me being annoyed by the Wheel of Time, and we're continuing today to go through Towers of Midnight, chapters 34 until 47, I think? Something like that. That's where we are right now, and there's things to be talked about that are, some good, most bad, and the usual crap. So, let's do that, shall we? Well, cheers. All right. So, what's going down this time round? Well, Rand's off doing Rand things somewhere that we don't know about. Jesusing it up, I guess. So let's look at all the other characters that are important or not so important. Mostly not so important. Now let's look at them. We get the big trial of Perrin Goldeneyes. We get the death of Hopper. We get Perrin's, salvation, not salvation, but rehabilitation. We get a lot of stuff happening in these chapters now because we're getting closer to the end. We have to rush things because we took too much time talking about Perrin running around like a stupid wolf. We also have Egwene doing fucked up things, and a little bit of Elaine, and all kinds of other bits and pieces. As I said, at this point, the whole Perrin White Cloaks thing goes as you might imagine. He gets sentenced. He can go away. He comes back to save Gallard from the Trollocs. Gallard is like, all right, I'll say, you just pay a bit of Wergild and then we're done. Perrin's like, wonderful, child Bayar's, I'll kill you. Bornhold's like, I'll kill you, and you know what I mean. It's a lot, and none of it was even remotely unpredictable. Egwene has a weird plan of looking at Missana, luring her out, then there's like a big combat there that intersects with Perrin's combat and all of that. We get our first look at the Black Tower that no one really cares about. Yeah? And that not all is well there, and Rand has not cared about it at all, which, yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. We get a look at Tuon, so we can have a bit more humiliation for Elida. And we got Divine Intervention, which also, we didn't really need. Also, Perrin is now Thor, which is pretty neat. All right, let's go through these bits and pieces by theme and issue. And let's start with a positive one. So, before we get into the whole death of Hopper thing, because, Alright, so let's look at Perrin forging a new hammer. He forges a hammer that has a name that is suspiciously close to Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor in Norse mythology. And that's a really cool thing. I want to point that out. So we have Perrin, who's running around with a big hammer and all. So he's sort of like Thor. And we have Rand, who recently lost a hand, which is almost losing an entire arm, like bits of an arm, which is what a certain Norse war god by the name of Tyr did. Well, a wolf bit it off, but you know what I mean. And we have our good buddy, Matt, who hung in a tree because he gained some wisdom from beyond. And, yeah, well, that sounds suspiciously Odin-like, and if he will lose an eye, he'll be even more Odin-like. He's also wandering around wearing a hat, which is also very Odin-like. So yeah, there we go. We have this idea, or well, I'm pretty sure it's on purpose, right? We have this idea that those three main characters are turning more and more into three deities from Norse mythology. I'll not look into whether you can make parallels for Elaine, Nynaeve, and Egwene, because no one cares about women in these books. Never. But that's a cool thing. So we have this, which kind of goes well with the idea of the pattern repeating itself and just taking different shapes depending on which age we're in, and I like that, and that's how mythology will be born. So I like that. I just feel outside of like very few bits and pieces, no one ever did a fucking thing with it. It's a huge missed opportunity to play with it like that, right? It's why not use this more? Why not? I mean, there's a cynical answer that I'm not going to give, but yeah. So I wanted to point out that I did like that idea. That was really cool. That like allusion to Norse mythology. I like that. That's fine. All right, let's do the Hopper thing, shall we? Because it shows a lot of things that are wrong with these books, especially the Brandon Sanderson books. I mean, the basic thing is what we spoke about, what I kind of predicted for it to happen, which is, you know, Perrin and Hopper run around and try to get that dome built by the Dream Spike removed by, Perrin attacking, or, well, he finds the Dream Spike and they try to attack Slayer, and they run around with Slayer and combat and battle each other, and Perrin runs with the Dream Spike to the White Tower and has a huge battle with Slayer there, and at some point Hopper gets killed. And Perrin he just leaves. But drops the Dream Spike into a nightmare, which apparently is powerful enough to destroy the Dream Spike. Now, why is this problematic? I already said that, like, the long build-up with the Hopper training montage and all these allusions and what's going on made the actual death of Hopper less impactful because, yeah, you could see it coming a mile ahead, and you're like, yeah, well, I've done my grieving, if there was any. Which is, sad, because Hopper is a really cool character. It would have been, like, so cool to have more Hopper over the last couple of books and having him more of a closer animal companion or whatever. That would have been really cool. And, yeah, it doesn't really do much after having, like, it rammed down my throat so much. And I think that's mostly a Brandon Sanderson thing, because Brandon Sanderson tends to repeat things ad nauseum in general themes or motifs, not like sentences like Robert Jordan, to make sure that every one of his readers absolutely has, gotten this wonderful plot twist so we can talk about it. And I'm not that kind of reader. It just annoys me and bores me to hell, which is a shame because, yes, the death of Hopper could have been, like, absolutely meaningful. That could have been, like, a really impactful thing if handled, like, decently. Now let's look at the other thing here. And that is another thing that I feel is more like a Brandon Sanderson writing thing, and one that I personally just don't like. That is very intricate combat sequences. We spoke about it yesterday with the Golem thing, which is already like very computer gamey, choreographed action scene, and now we have a much more intricate one. Because while Perrin is battling Slayer out there, Egwene and the Aes Sedai are battling Missana and the Black Aja in the White Tower, also in the Dream World. So Perrin bringing the Dream Spike makes it impossible for the Black Aja to leave, because the Dream Spike builds this like dome around it, so everyone is locked in, and then you have those two combats, jumping between those two combats around the White Tower. And that's what I mean. It is like highly intricately constructed combat action sequence, and it's an entire chapter, and it's boring as fuck. Because it's an action sequence, and it's very computer gamey in the way it is choreographed. And you have people jumping around, running up places, diving. I don't fucking care. It's not fun. I'm not playing a first-person shooter here. I'm not the guy actually doing this. And there's almost no adrenaline. And the lengths to which Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson go to construct the constraints for this one. It feels like you're building a level for like one of those like late 90s, early 2000s shooters. Like, you can't leave this place. You can do these things. You come into this smaller place, and suddenly you have these like nightmare constraints, and you do this. It is basically smoke and mirrors to give the impression of something impressive. and epic. But there's nothing in there. There's nothing behind it. At the end of the day, you have a bunch of people who can change reality with their brains. So you describe page after page after page of that, raising it to even more and more and more absurd heights. And that is just boring to build all of that up just to give that impression of, wow, look, we have these interlocked combats. Isn't that fancy? It's like, no, it's not fancy because the narrative isn't really good. The prose sucks. It's boring as fuck. Having like these magical combat is always really difficult to do because, yeah, people are throwing fireballs, whatever. It's absolutely arbitrary. So at the end of the day, the only thing impressive here is the way Brandon Sanderson or Robert Jordan forced these narratives into this weird, very weirdly constrained situation. And that's exactly what you see with like a lot of Brandon Sanderson, especially with Mistborn and the way that magic system works there, right? With the like flying around with like all these medals and shit, right? The problem with this is that it's basically self-indulgent to like next levels. It's like, look, I've come up with this crazy cool crazy cool level. Now let me play around with it. And at the end of the day, all we get is like Brandon Sanderson that's showing us what a cool level for a jump and run game he came up with. And I'm like, you know what? Then be a fucking level designer for a games company and don't write fucking novels about it. Because I don't bloody care. It's really, it goes ad nauseum. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't need 3 descriptions of like how they jump from level to level and then, you know, like light it up and then throw stuff at each other. It's boring. It's so fucking boring. And you interlock all of that with the death of Hopper. And I'm like, no. That's not how a meaningful, impactful death works. Go back, read the death of Boromir in, well, The Two Towers. That's how you make an impactful, meaningful death of a character. That's how you do that. Not like this. And I feel that's like a general thing that you see with a lot of modern fantasy, and especially with Brandon Sanderson. He's way too much in love with all the glittery bits he glues onto his stories to make them appear bigger than they really are. And yeah, no, just don't. It just didn't work for me at all. So yeah, and at the end of the day, Egwene just breaks Messana's brain because she's so powerful and has the weight of the tower behind her. And yeah, I don't know, whatever. You've just made someone mentally ill. Great job there. Well, good thing she's evil, isn't it? Now, the interesting bit there is obviously the Gawain water situation where he figures out or doesn't figure out that he has to subject himself to Egwene's will and then do what he has to do and ignore her things because, you know, he knows better anyway, which is why he saves Egwene, which he does because she would have been dead. And we know that's the problem because, once again, we're getting closer to the point where even Egwene has to acknowledge that she thinks she's smarter than she is. And once again, I would be fine if this were a general theme with like all the characters where, you know, you're never as smart as you think you are. I'm fine with that. But it's only the women that always run into these kind of things. So Gawain saves her, becomes her warder, and now everything will be great. I'm not convinced. Yeah, speaking of which, Morghese finally marries her stalker, and it's still an absolute fuck up. And I can't. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over and over and over, but man, I see what you were trying to shoehorn into this, Bobby J and Brandon Sanderson, who I will never ever call the, you know, O version, right? We don't do that here. I was thinking about calling him B Sissy, but I don't think that's nice, so we will just like call him Sanderson. Anyway, or the dragon steel dude. That guy, right? So the point that he tries to like retrofit into that whole thing is like Morghese has given everything to her duty as the queen because the queen is more than just a woman and so forth. So she cannot allow herself to marry anyone. You know, that whole crap. And you can make something out of that if you really feel like you want to look into the demands of certain offices, what they make on those demands, what they make on how they impact your private life. That's something that you can extend into how capitalism, how your job, all of these things actually prevent you from living the life that you want to live. Yes, you can just like use the whole like queen in love or king in love kind of situation there because it's a bit more romantic and it's larger than life and you can use that. I'm fine with that. But that doesn't change the like basic narrative here, which is Talonvor is still her stalker. It's like, I'm in love with her, I'm in love with her, now I got a little power over her, so I'll just use all of it. And when she's going back to being a queen, I'm like pissed off and whiny and play all like, that. And then she finally opens her heart. That is one of the most toxic stories in that entire fucking book, which has a shit ton of toxic stories in there, which is the big problem of these Wheel of Time novels, right? And we just like play it straight all the way to the end, including stooping fucking Linny, who's like, no, you get married because no fucking before marriage, that's nothing we do here, even though, whatever. I don't get it. It's just ridiculous and it pisses me off. And like at these moments we just like go all the way to like arse end of nowhere arch conservative bullshit. And it pisses me off because what it does at the end of the day is that it claims that there is true love and it will happen and then you need to get married and then you get to fuck. Probably only to procreate. Everything else is just pillow friends or stuff that your old nursemaid will never approve of. Well, thank you there. Good thing Rand bonded everyone. All right. So yeah, we get that one. We also have the Berelain falls in love with Gallard. Of course she does, and it's true love suddenly. And there's that entire chapter written from Queen Alejandro's perspective, and I'm like, why do we need that chapter? You could drop that entire chapter and get nothing in there, nothing new. Isn't like whatever. Why blow up that part and then rush other things as fast as we do in these novels? I don't get it. Then there's interesting bits and pieces that are just like slightly inconsistent when, Perrin and Elaine finally meet, and Elaine is all about, yeah, you're a rebel because, you're Lord of the... And they kind of hash all of that crap out, which is interesting. But Elaine has met Perrin before in, the end of The Dragon Reborn. And I guess theoretically in what's it called? The first one, the second one, The Great Hunt and The Shadow Rising. They know each other as people, and even after they hash out all the, oh shit, you're a lord now, I need to save face and whatnot. Even after that, they don't even fucking acknowledge it. It's like, why? I don't know. It's just like stupid. I know I can see all these like we need to solve this because and the idea that there is the person of the queen and the person of Elaine, but once you've hashed that shit out, you could just like actually, if you want to make that point about like the office being more than just the person, you could actually build that in and have like a scene where Elaine kind of relaxes, like, well, Perrin, also, whatever. Because they have met, they have spoken before, they know each other. And I just, yeah, it sucks. It's just like why do it that way? It just doesn't prove anything and whatever. it is just what it is, I guess, and we'll have to live with it. Anyway, we're setting for the final battle. Perrin has the White Cloaks under his command, and that's apparently a good thing. Elaine still wants Perrin, Matt, and everyone to show up in, what's the place? That Field of Merilor, where they will all talk to Rand and tell him that breaking the seals is a dumb idea, and we already know that he will certainly break the seals, because he's right, because he's Fireball Jesus now, and yeah. We'll see how all of that works. Now let's look at some of the other bits and pieces that I personally find weird and that show stuff. Let's start with the neglected ones. I think that's a good part. So we meet people that plot lines that just like don't go anywhere and didn't and deserved more. So we have that one chapter about the Black Tower, right? Mazrim Taim is doing dumb things, and we have other people in the White Tower, in the Black Tower, that are sort of trying to stay true to Rand. And at least one person raised the questions like, why is Rand never showing up here? And it's like, yeah, that's a very good question. Why does Rand never show up? He runs around with the Ashaman he has, and then ignores that whole Black Tower plotline. I'm like, maybe Robert Jordan planned something grand for it, and then just forgot about it. But that's not how you build up something for your setting, for your plot, and then just like never mention it until like the penultimate novels. Like, why even build that tension there? What's your point there? So that chapter, while being okay in itself, just was like shone a light on like how badly the whole like Black Tower plotline was handled before. And I don't know where this will be going, because we don't have that much time left in the novels. So we'll see with that one. Speaking of which, Tuon. Yes, Tuon, who is now Fortune. And I don't want to double check this, but if you can tell me, is the dumb fortune joke something that only came up with the Brandon Sanderson novels? Because as far as I know, she takes on the new name Fortune in that one chapter that she gets in Gathering Storm, and not back in the day in Knife of Dreams. So I'm tempted to blame Brandon Sanderson, who seems like the guy who would think that a really good, foreshadowing or reference to pull that one in. Because, Fortune's in love with the guy with the luck. Didn't we just make a great... Isn't that almost symbolism? No, it's not. It's dumb. But yeah, so we get like a quick chapter where we learn that she has traveling now because, of course, Elida has been, humiliated into doing it. And we get like another scene where we get to dunk on Elida, which still is as repulsive as it was last book. But I guess we needed that chapter. I mean, we don't. Because, yes, they have that now. They decide to actually attack the White Tower in force. But, we don't need a chapter telling us that, because everyone knows that. Egwene already said, they took, Aes Sedai who know how to travel. They'll show up in force. We know all of that. We don't need an extra chapter telling us that. That's not necessary. Speaking of, bits and pieces that could have been left out because no one really needs it. Now let's look at Aviendha. Because I feel Aviendha has been, I feel bad for Aviendha. Aviendha is one of the more interesting, or one of the less stupid characters in this book. One of the less bad characters in this book. And she's been done dirty by Bobby J and Brandon Sanderson. Real dirty, because we don't get her perspective. Almost never. She's always somewhere in the back, being pushed around. She only gets the Rand D once, and then she's pushed around. We don't get any. Min hangs out with Rand all the time, and her job with Rand is to keep him balanced. Elaine's job is to actually procreate with Rand, which is dumb, whatever. I mean, we don't even need. I mean, that's like a point. It's like, if that stupid last battle comes in the next couple of weeks, world time, which I assume, why do we need Elaine to be pregnant? Who gives a fucking shit about her kids afterwards? That's when the story ends. We don't care. So why have the pregnancy plot in there? Whatever, I'm not saying that, but Elaine spends time with Rand and all of these things, and Avienda is always standing in the background, doesn't get to do anything with Rand, has to keep her distance, all of these things, and I feel like, why? Is it because she's actually like a strong woman, or is it because she's from the Savages and not from the good white Andorans? I don't know, but it feels kind of sus, and I feel kind of I would prefer more Avienda, is what I'm saying, but not the chapter that we get here with Nakomi, which is straight up divine intervention. So she's wandering around in the desert, which is exactly where you meet divine intervention. That's God speaks to you like burning whatever bushes, thorn bushes and shit like that. That's how that works. So she's sitting in the desert, and out of nowhere, this woman shows up, makes the best food ever, gives her a bunch of like important tips that she really needs to know, so we get like some more meaning into Avienda, and then just like disappears again. And like the the gall, the gall of Brandon Sanderson or Robert Jordan, whoever came up with that bullshit idea of dropping that one there. I mean, fuck's sake. That's like, are we writing religious pamphlets now? But because like, where does like someone with those good ideas come from? Because they're obviously good ideas. They're not the dark one. We can tell this is not like a Forsaken or whatever. They come from the light, from the creator, from the pattern, the wheel. Who fucking cares? I thought the good side, the creator, is uncaring and left the whole shitty thing alone. Which, get your theology straight. If you can, if the creator can send people in, then the creator is an active force, and then you should actually go and pray to the fucking creator and build up a proper religion. But we don't do that because I have a theory why. I'll end it when we're done with the book, or with the last book. But yeah, that was just like really cheap. I mean, there'll be all kinds of ways to make that work. I don't know, but why this blunt? Hammer it down? Is it because you want to leave the reader in with the impression that yes, a good creator actually exists, so go back to Sunday school and go to church, dear reader, because suddenly this is no longer a fantasy story, but a piece of religious fanfic. Sucks. Just saying, it sucks, and it's just also really bad storytelling if almost at the end of your world you basically break one of the fundamental, if not the fundamental idea of the world by having a direct divine intervention, and say nothing of just like dropping your like Deus Ex Machina out of nowhere because you need to save your story. Just like don't. It's just like really bad. No one needs that. Unless you have like a religious motive behind it. In that case, yeah, I don't know. Not my cup of tea. That's what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, that's all the things that we got this time around. A lot of like messy shit. Way too much setup for a way too boring combat scene that is so self-indulgent that it really stinks to high heaven, and the Stalker gets what he wants. Awesome, isn't it? I can't wait to find out where this shit ends, and if Matt loses an eye and becomes more Odin than before. We will see. Maybe even the Sean-Chen will at some point make any sense in this setting, because once again it's like, why have that whole Matt meets Tuon storyline in Knife of Dreams and then mention her twice in the next two books? Why have the fucking Sean-Chen out there at all? What's their like, I don't know, it just isn't good is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it more than me, and I'll let you know all about the rest of this thing tomorrow, and then we'll do something cool over the weekend. Anyway, see you around. Cheers.